Welcome to Sleeping Times. Have you ever stopped to think that more than 1,000 years ago, ordinary people crossed scorching deserts and snow-covered mountains, carrying treasures on the backs of camels, risking their lives to connect worlds that had never met? While you buy something online and receive it in days, these travelers took months, facing sandstorms, bandits, and the thin air of extreme altitudes. Today we are going to walk alongside one of these caravans, smell the spices, hear the tinkling of camel bells, and discover how these epic journeys shape the world we live in today. If you're enjoying this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our relaxing stories. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always incredible to see how spread out our community is across the world. Now, how about turning off the lights, finding a comfortable position, and preparing yourself for an unforgettable journey along the legendary Silk Road, where each step reveals wonders, dangers, and the extraordinary courage of those who dared to connect East and West. Darkness still dominates the desert when the first sounds begin to echo across the camp. It is that silent hour of the early morning when the cold of the night has not yet given way to the relentless heat of the day, and the stars seem to pulse with greater intensity in the infinite sky. The air carries an almost cutting freshness, and each breath seems purer, cleaner. Slowly, one by one, the fires begin to be relit, their timid flames dancing against the immense darkness of the horizon. The smell of burning wood mingles with the persistent aroma of spices that pervades every fiber, every fabric, every corner of that nomadic camp. The first men to rise move with the precision of those who have repeated these gestures 1,000 times. There is no rush, but there is purpose. Each movement is calculated, economical, respecting the rhythm that the desert imposes. They walk among the felt and leather tents, checking the animals, adjusting ropes, preparing the tea that will be the first meal of the day. The sound of their sandals on the compacted sand is almost imperceptible, as if even their footsteps respected the sacred silence of that moment. Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like to wake up every day without the shrill alarm of your cell phone, but instead with the natural rhythm of the world around you? The camels begin to stir, their large and awkward bodies gradually coming to life. They chew calmly, producing that characteristic, guttural and constant sound, which becomes part of the caravan's soundtrack. Their humps project strange shadows in the light of the fires, and their large and expressive eyes observe everything with that millennial patience that only these animals seem to possess. They are creatures perfectly adapted to this hostile environment, capable of crossing unimaginable distances without water, carrying loads that would break the back of any other animal. They are, in many ways, the true silent heroes of the Silk Road. Water is heated in large copper cauldrons, metal that reflects the orange light of the flames in a hypnotic way. The tea is prepared with leaves brought from distant mountains, mixed with salt, yak butter, and spices that vary depending on the region of origin of each merchant. The dark and aromatic liquid is served in small ceramic bowls, and the men drink it slowly, feeling the heat descend through their throats and spread throughout their bodies. It is a ritual of warming, of preparation, of silent communion before the demanding day begins. At that moment, it doesn't matter if you are a wealthy merchant from Samarkand or a simple desert guide, everyone shares the same tea, the same cold, the same anticipation. As the sky begins to brighten on the eastern horizon, first appearing as a thin line of blue-grey, then expanding into shades of pale pink and soft gold, the camp comes to life more intensely. The women who travel with the caravan, merchants' wives, cooks, weavers, begin to dismantle the tents with practical and efficient movements. Each stake is removed, each fabric folded carefully, each object stored in its specific place. There is an invisible order in this apparent chaos, a choreography learned through generations. Everything has its place, everything has its function, nothing is wasted. The merchants check their merchandise one last time before loading it onto the animals. Rolls of silk in colors ranging from deep red to sky blue, bags of spices whose aromas mix in the air. Black pepper, cinnamon, cardamom, saffron, precious stones carefully wrapped in soft fabrics, delicate porcelain protected by layers of straw and felt. Each item represents not just commercial value, but stories, cultures, the work of artisans who will never know the final buyers of their creations. It is fascinating to think that at that time, a piece of silk could travel thousands of kilometers, passing through dozens of hands before reaching its final destination. The leader of the caravan, a middle-aged man with a face marked by sun and wind, observes the horizon with experienced eyes. He knows every dune, every oasis, every potential danger along the route. His responsibility is immense. Not only the merchandise depends on him, but the lives of everyone traveling under his leadership. He consults the stars that still shine faintly in the brightening sky, checks the wind direction, feels the temperature of the air. These are subtle signs that only years of experience can teach one to interpret. There are no detailed maps, no GPS, no reliable weather forecast, only ancestral knowledge and sharpened intuition. The animals are loaded with meticulous care. Each load must be perfectly balanced, distributed in a way that doesn't hurt the animal during the long hours of walking. The men work in pairs, adjusting the ropes, checking the straps, ensuring that nothing comes loose during the journey. A camel can carry up to 200 kilos, but only if the load is well distributed. It is work that requires strength, but also delicacy and deep knowledge of animal anatomy. How many times in our modern life do we stop to consider the balance necessary to carry our own burdens? The sun finally breaks the horizon, and its golden light floods the desert instantly. It is as if someone had turned on a giant lamp, transforming the landscape from shades of grey and blue into explosions of gold, ochre, and amber. The dunes gain defined contours, their sharp crests casting long and dramatic shadows. The cold of the night begins to dissipate rapidly, and it is already possible to feel the promise of the heat that will come. This is the ideal time to begin the journey, with enough light to see the path, but before the sun becomes a relentless enemy. One final check is made. Water skins are checked and recounted. Water is more precious than gold in the desert. Weapons are inspected, curved swords, bows, spears, because bandits are a constant threat. Provisions are calculated, flatbread that lasts weeks, dried fruits, salted meat, hard cheeses. Everything must be enough to reach the next stop, but not so much as to overload the animals. It is a delicate calculation where an error can mean the difference between life and death. The caravan leader raises his hand, and an expectant silence takes hold of the group. For a moment, everyone stops. Everyone looks at him. Everyone waits. Then, his deep voice resonates across the camp, giving the order that everyone has been waiting for. The first camels begin to move, their wide hooves sinking slightly into the sand, still fresh from the morning. The tinkling of bells hung from their necks creates a metallic and rhythmic melody that will accompany the caravan throughout the day. One by one, the animals line up, forming an undulating line that extends for hundreds of meters. The journey has begun. Behind them, the camp no longer exists, only marks in the sand that the wind will soon erase. Ahead, the desert stretches infinitely, its dunes forming golden waves that seem to have no end. But somewhere beyond that impossible horizon, magnificent cities await, bustling markets, people who have never seen a caravan like this. And between here and there lies a path full of wonders and dangers that few in the world truly know. The caravan moves with a rhythm that seems to have been established for millennia. It is not fast, but it is constant. One step after another, 1 hour after another, without haste, but without unnecessary pause. The camels swing their heads from side to side as they walk, their long necks oscillating in a hypnotic movement. The sound of their hooves on the sand creates a dull and constant rhythm, punctuated by the tinkling of bells and the occasional creaking of loads adjusting on their backs. It is a symphony of the desert, monotonous to some, but profoundly reassuring to those accustomed to it. The men walk beside the animals, some holding the reins, others simply following the rhythm. Their clothes are practical and adapted to the environment. Long tunics of cotton or linen that protect from the sun, turbans that cover the head and face leaving only the eyes exposed, sturdy leather sandals. The colors vary. Some prefer white that reflects heat, others wear shades of ochre and brown that blend with the landscape. Each piece of clothing tells a story about its owner's origin. The embroidered patterns, the type of fabric, the way the turban is tied reveal which city, which region, which culture that person comes from. The sun rises rapidly in the sky, and with it, the temperature. What was fresh and pleasant in the morning gradually transforms into a dry and penetrating heat. The air begins to shimmer over the dunes, creating mirages that dance on the horizon, lakes that do not exist, cities that are merely optical illusions, palm trees that disappear when you approach. For the inexperienced, these visions can be maddening, but the caravan's veterans barely notice them. They learned long ago not to trust their eyes in the desert, but instead to rely on their knowledge of the path and the stars that guide them at night. The landscape around them changes subtly as they advance. The dunes are not all alike. Some are small and gentle, others are mountains of sand that rise tens of meters high. Some areas are covered by a hard crust of salt and minerals, where footsteps echo strangely. Others are fine and loose sand that makes every movement difficult, causing animals to work twice as hard to move forward. Occasionally, strange rock formations appear, sculpted by wind over thousands of years, assuming shapes that resemble animals, people, fantastical castles. Did our ancestors see in these formations the same signs and symbols that we would see today? During the march, there is little conversation. The effort of walking under the rising sun, combined with the need to conserve water, causes people to economize their words. But there is communication, exchanged glances, subtle gestures, a nod, a brief smile. These men and women have learned to understand each other without needing many words. There is a silent camaraderie that develops between those who share the dangers and difficulties of the road. They come from different places, speak different languages, worship different gods, but here, in the desert, they are simply companions on a journey. Every 2 or 3 hours, the caravan leader signals a brief stop. The animals need to rest, even if only for 15 or 20 minutes. They are partially unloaded, allowing blood to circulate better beneath the straps. Water is offered, but sparingly. The camels can go days without drinking, but when they do drink, they consume enormous quantities. The men also drink small sips of lukewarm water from leather skins that give the liquid a characteristic taste. Some chew dates or pieces of dry bread, replenishing energy without having a full meal. There is no time for cooking, no time for prolonged rest. The desert does not forgive those who linger too long. During these breaks, some take the opportunity to check their merchandise, ensuring that nothing has shifted or been damaged. Others check the animal's hooves, looking for wounds or trapped stones. There is always something to do, always something to check. Constant maintenance is what keeps a caravan functioning. A small problem ignored in the morning can become a disaster in the afternoon. It is a lesson that applies not only to the desert, but to life. Small, constant care prevents future catastrophes. The wind begins to blow stronger as the day progresses. In the desert, wind is a constant presence, sometimes gentle, sometimes cruel. It can bring relief from the heat, but it can also bring sandstorms that transform day into night and suffocate everything in their path. Experienced men constantly observe the sky, looking for signs, a change in the color of the horizon, a certain quality to the light, the behavior of the animals. Camels, in particular, seem to sense storms before any human can detect them, becoming restless and reluctant to move forward. At midday, when the sun is at its highest point and the heat is most intense, the caravan makes a longer stop. If there is any rocky formation nearby that offers shade, they seek it eagerly. Otherwise, they improvise shelters with fabric stretched between loads, creating small islands of shadow in a sea of blinding light. This is the time for mandatory rest. Attempting to continue under the midday sun would be suicide. Men and animals crowd together under whatever shade is available, breathing slowly, conserving energy, waiting for the day's cruelest hours to pass. During this forced rest period, some sleep, others converse in hushed tones, still others perform their prayers. The Silk Road is a place where religions meet: Buddhists, Zoroastrians, Nestorian Christians, Muslims, all traveling together, each with their own practices and beliefs. There is a mutual respect born of necessity. In the desert, survival depends on cooperation, not division. The differences that seem so important in cities become secondary when you are days away from civilization, depending on each other to survive. While resting, some merchants take the opportunity to conduct business among themselves. They exchange information about prices in different cities, about alternative routes, about which local authorities are charging the highest fees. This knowledge is valuable, sometimes more valuable than the merchandise itself. A well-informed merchant can avoid dangerous routes, anticipate market changes, know where his merchandise will have the greatest value. It is a network of information that extends for thousands of kilometers, passing from caravan to caravan, from merchant to merchant. Slowly, the sun begins its descent in the sky, and the unbearable heat gives way to more tolerable temperatures. The caravan leader rises, and this simple gesture is enough for everyone to know it is time to resume the march. The animals are reloaded, the water skins checked once more, and the long line forms again. But now there is a difference in the air, a sense that something is changing, that the next stretch of the journey will bring something different. Perhaps it is merely the change in light, or perhaps it is something more, something that only those attuned to the rhythm of the desert can perceive. The afternoon brings a different light to the desert. The sun, now lower in the sky, casts longer and softer shadows, transforming the dunes into waves of light and darkness. The colors change. The intense gold of midday gives way to richer tones of amber, copper, and bronze. It is as if the desert were preparing for the spectacle of the sunset, adjusting its color palette gradually. The air, though still hot, loses that suffocating quality of midday, becoming more breathable, almost pleasant. The caravan's men walk with renewed energy. There is a goal on the horizon, not a literal one, for the desert's horizon is always deceptive, but a goal known only to those who have memorized the route. Today, if all goes well, they should reach an oasis before nightfall. The promise of fresh water, true shade beneath real palm trees, a place to rest properly, drives each step forward. It is curious how a clear goal can transform exhaustion into determination, how hope can be a more powerful fuel than any food. But the desert rarely delivers its rewards without first testing those who cross it. On the horizon, a subtle change in the sky's color catches the attention of the most experienced. It is nothing obvious, merely a slight yellowish tint, a certain opacity in the distant air. But to those who know the signs, it is enough. A sandstorm is forming, still distant, but moving in their direction. The caravan leader furrows his brow, mentally calculating distances and speeds. Will they be able to reach the oasis before the storm catches up with them? Or will they have to face the desert's fury in the open? The decision is made quickly: increase the pace. The camels are encouraged to walk faster. The men quicken their steps. It is not a desperate race, for that would exhaust everyone too quickly, but a calculated increase in speed. Each minute gained now may be crucial later. Conversations cease completely. All energy is directed toward movement. Even the camels' bells seem to ring with greater urgency, their metallic tinkling accelerating along with their steps. As they advance, the wind begins to change. Stronger gusts arise from time to time, bringing with them small whirlwinds of sand that dance across the landscape. Sand begins to lash exposed faces, forcing the men to adjust their turbans, covering their faces more completely. The animals lower their heads, their eyes protected by long eyelashes that evolved specifically for this purpose. Nature, in its infinite wisdom, has prepared these creatures to survive in conditions that would kill most other living beings. On the opposite horizon, finally, a sign of hope appears, a patch of green that is not a mirage. It is small, almost imperceptible at first sight, but it is there, solid and real. The oasis. The sight renews everyone's strength, and the pace increases even more. But the storm is also closer now, its presence undeniable. The sky behind them has darkened, a wall of sand and wind approaching like a living creature, devouring the landscape. It is a race against time, against nature, against forces that do not care about human plans or hopes. The first heavier grains of sand begin to strike them, no longer brought by occasional gusts, but in a constant flow. Visibility begins to decrease. What was once clear and defined becomes hazy and uncertain. The men at the rear of the caravan can barely see those in front. The leader shouts orders, his voice struggling to be heard above the growing roar of the wind. The ropes connecting the camels are checked. No one can be lost now. Separating from the caravan in a sandstorm is a death sentence. The green patch on the horizon grows slowly, painfully slowly. Each step seems like an eternity. Sand is now everywhere, in the eyes, in the mouth, in the ears, infiltrating through every layer of clothing. Breathing becomes difficult, each breath bringing fine grains that scratch the throat. The camels moan, a low and distressed sound they rarely produce. Even they, perfectly adapted to the desert, have their limits. How much more can we endure before acknowledging that we have reached our own? And then, just when it seems the storm will catch them, when the wall of sand is so close that it completely blocks the view of what is behind, they cross an invisible line. Suddenly, there are trees around them. Tall and majestic palm trees that bend under the wind but remain firm. There are stone structures, low walls that offer protection. There are other travelers already there, waving and shouting, guiding them to sheltered areas. They have made it. For a few minutes, perhaps for seconds, but they have made it. The caravan disperses quickly, each group seeking shelter. The camels are led to corrals protected by high walls. The most delicate merchandise is covered with waxed canvas. People crowd into stone structures, caravanserais built specifically for this purpose, offering refuge to travelers for centuries. And then, with a roar that seems to come from the very center of the earth, the storm arrives. The world disappears in a whirlwind of sand and wind. Day transforms into an artificial and suffocating night. Inside the shelters, illuminated by oil lamps that flicker with currents of air that seep through every crack, the caravan members look at each other. There is relief in everyone's eyes, but also respect. Respect for the desert, for its power, for its indifference to human life. They have survived this time. But everyone knows the journey is far from over and that the desert will have other opportunities to test their determination, their luck, their will to continue. Outside, the storm rages with primitive fury, redesigning the landscape, burying old paths and creating new ones. When it passes, the desert will be different, and those who cross it will have to adapt once more. But for now, there is shelter, there is relative safety, and there is the promise of fresh water and rest. Sometimes it is all we can ask for. Not the absence of storms, but a safe harbor where we can wait for them to pass. The storm lasts until nightfall, its fury gradually diminishing until it becomes merely strong wind, then breeze, then silence. When the travelers finally emerge from their shelters, the world has been transformed. Dunes that existed in the morning have disappeared, new formations have appeared in their place. Sand has covered paths and revealed others, buried old markers and exposed rocks that had been hidden for years. The desert has reinvented itself once more, as it has for millennia, indifferent to the plans and maps of humans who attempt to cross it. But the oasis remains, as it always has remained. The palm trees still stand tall, their leaves now cleaned by the sand that lashed them. Water still springs from the ground, a miracle that never ceases to surprise those who witness it. How can there be water here, in the midst of such aridity? The answer lies in the depths of the earth, in underground aquifers that flow invisibly beneath the desert, fed by rains that fall on distant mountains. It is a complex and delicate system, and oases are the points where this water finds its way to the surface. The oasis is not large, perhaps 200 meters in diameter, with a small lake in the center, surrounded by palm trees, date palms, and some hardy shrubs. But for those who have spent days crossing the desert, it is paradise. The water is crystalline, reflecting the first stars that begin to appear in the darkening sky. Around the lake, grass grows in vibrant green tufts, a color so intense it seems unreal after days of seeing only shades of brown and gold. The air here is different, humid, perfumed with the smell of vegetation and wet earth, a fragrance that is almost intoxicating in its richness. The camels are led to the water first, for without them there is no caravan. They drink deeply, their long necks bending, their mouths sucking liters and liters of water. A thirsty camel can drink more than 100 liters at once, replenishing the reserves that will allow it to traverse the next several days without drinking again. It is an impressive spectacle, this capacity for storage, this perfect adaptation to the most hostile environment. How many times do we wish we had this same capacity to prepare ourselves for the arid periods of our own lives? While the animals drink and rest, the humans begin to establish a more elaborate camp than the temporary ones of the desert. Tents are erected in designated areas around the oasis, respecting an unwritten but universally understood order. There are places for cooking, places for sleeping, places for merchandise, places for prayers. The caravanserai, a structure of stone and mud brick with a central courtyard and rooms around it, offers accommodation for those willing to pay for it. It is an ancient construction, its walls marked by centuries of use, its stones carved with names and messages from travelers long dead. Fires are lit, and for the first time in days, there is an adequate meal. Copper pots are placed over the flames, and soon the aroma of cooking food spreads across the oasis. Rice with lamb, seasoned with precious spices that the merchants themselves transport. Fresh bread, baked in mud ovens built specifically for this purpose. Fresh fruits from the palm trees, sweet and succulent dates that burst with flavor in the mouth. Strong and sweet tea served in small glasses of colored glass that reflect the firelight like liquid jewels. The meal is a social event, a moment of communion after days of silent marching. Merchants from different caravans mingle, exchanging stories and information. A man from Kashgar speaks about jade prices in the eastern cities. A woman from Bukhara shares news about political changes that may affect trade routes. A young man from Damascus describes new fabric patterns that are becoming popular in the Mediterranean. Each conversation is a piece of a larger puzzle, an invisible map of trade, politics, and culture that extends across the entire known world. But it is not all business. There is also music. A man takes a stringed instrument from his baggage and begins to play melancholic melodies that speak of home, of longing, of long journeys and awaited returns. Others join in, some singing, others clapping rhythmically. Music flows naturally without need for rehearsal, for these melodies are known by all who travel the Silk Road. They are songs that cross borders and languages, uniting people through the universal language of emotion and rhythm. Children run between the tents, playing with an energy that seems inexhaustible despite the difficult days. Some travel with their families, children of merchants who are learning the trade from an early age. Others belong to families who live permanently at the oasis, maintaining the caravanserai and cultivating small gardens in the irrigated areas. They play together without caring about differences of origin or language, creating games that transcend cultural barriers. There is a lesson there, perhaps, in the capacity of children to find connection and joy where adults see only differences. As the night advances, the oasis transforms into a microcosm of the Silk Road world. Here, in this small green dot in the middle of the desert, converge cultures, religions, languages, and traditions from across the continent. A Buddhist monk converses respectfully with a Muslim merchant. A Nestorian Christian shares his meal with a Persian Zoroastrian. There is no conflict here, only mutual curiosity and respect born from the understanding that all depend on each other to survive. The desert has a way of putting things in perspective. When you are days away from civilization, theological differences seem less important than shared humanity. Eventually the conversations diminish, the music becomes softer, the fires burn lower. People begin to retire to their tents and rooms. Tomorrow there will be another day of journey, other difficulties to face, other distances to cover. But for this night, there is peace, there is water, there is food, there is company. There is the soft sound of wind in the palms, the brilliance of stars reflected in the lake's water, the comfort of knowing you are safe, at least for a few hours. But even as they sleep, the travelers know the oasis is only a pause, not a destination. In the morning, they will have to leave this small paradise and return to the relentless desert. The merchandise still needs to reach its destinations, the profits still need to be realized, the journeys still need to be completed. The oasis offers rest, but it also serves as a reminder that there are places of beauty and abundance in the world, but that reaching them requires crossing the deserts, both literal and metaphorical, that stand in our way. The dawn at the oasis is different from the dawn in the open desert. Here there is the song of birds, small creatures that make their nests in the palm trees and fill the air with their complex melodies. There is the sound of water running through small irrigation channels carved generations ago. There are human voices, morning conversations, the clattering of pots being prepared for breakfast. It is a gentler, more civilized awakening, but it carries with it the melancholy of knowing it will soon be left behind. The caravan prepares to depart, but it is not alone. During the night, another caravan arrived, this one coming from the opposite direction, from the east, bringing merchandise and news from lands that some of the travelers will never see. It is always a significant moment when two caravans meet, for each carries vital information for the other. The leaders greet each other with formal respect, then sit down to share tea and converse about the road conditions ahead. The leader of the eastern caravan is an elderly man, his face so marked by sun and wind that it seems sculpted from dark wood. His eyes, however, are bright and alert, missing no detail. He speaks of a mountain pass ahead where bandits have been recently spotted. He describes a river that overflowed due to unexpected rains, making a usual passage impassable. He mentions a city where a new dynasty has taken power and is charging higher customs duties. Each piece of information is valuable. Each detail can mean the difference between profit and loss, between safety and danger. In exchange, the leader of the caravan heading east shares his own information. He speaks of a particularly severe sandstorm they faced 3 days ago and how the desert changed after it. He describes an oasis that dried up unexpectedly, forcing them to make a 2-day detour. He mentions that silk prices are rising in the western cities, information that makes the eyes of the other caravan's merchants shine with interest. It is a fair exchange, knowledge for knowledge, experience for experience. But it is not only the leaders who interact. Merchants from both caravans circulate, examining each other's merchandise, making offers, negotiating trades. A merchant may decide that certain merchandise will fetch a better price if sold sooner and trade it with someone heading in the opposite direction. Another may see an opportunity to acquire something rare that was not available in his city of origin. These transactions happen quickly, with economical gestures and words, but each one represents complex calculations of value, risk, and opportunity. There are also less tangible exchanges. A traveling physician shares remedies and knowledge about treatments for common illnesses of the road. A professional storyteller who travels from city to city earning his living through his narratives adds new tales to his repertoire by listening to the experiences of other travelers. A cartographer updates his maps with information about changes in the landscape. Each encounter enriches everyone involved, adding layers of knowledge and experience that will be carried forward and shared again at future encounters. Among the travelers of the Eastern Caravan, there is a young woman who attracts attention. She travels with her father, a spice merchant, but it is clear she is not a passive passenger. She examines merchandise with an expert eye, participates in negotiations, asks intelligent questions about routes and prices. In a time and place where women rarely actively participate in commerce, her presence is remarkable. But the Silk Road has always been a place of exceptions, where the normal rules of society bend in the face of the practical needs of survival and trade. She approaches one of the older merchants of the caravan heading west and asks about conditions in the Mediterranean cities. He responds with detail describing markets, palaces, ports, where ships from even more distant lands bring exotic merchandise. She listens intently, asking occasional questions that reveal a sharp mind for business. When the conversation ends, both bow respectfully, he acknowledging her intelligence, she acknowledging his experience. It is a small moment but a significant one, a reminder that merit can be recognized regardless of gender, when survival and success depend on competence, not social conventions. As the sun rises, both caravans begin their final preparations to depart. There is a certain sadness in these moments. Connections have been made, friendships initiated, but everyone knows they will probably never meet again. The Silk Road is vast, and the chances of two specific people crossing paths twice are minimal. So farewells are warm but brief, accompanied by wishes for good luck and safe travels. There are no promises to meet again, for everyone knows they would be empty. The caravan heading west forms its line once more, the camels loaded, the men in their places. They leave the oasis behind, and with it, the caravan heading east, which will remain one more day resting before continuing its own journey. As they move away, some look back, seeing the palm trees grow smaller on the horizon, watching the other caravan become just dark dots against the green of the oasis. It is always difficult to leave a place of comfort and security to return to the uncertain desert. But there is also a certain excitement in the new beginning. The information obtained from the other caravan has changed some plans. Routes will be adjusted, trading strategies reconsidered, extra precautions taken. Knowledge is power, especially on the Silk Road, and they now have more knowledge than they had yesterday. This does not guarantee success, does not eliminate all dangers, but it increases their chances, and sometimes a small advantage is all that separates success from failure. The desert receives them back with its usual indifference. The dunes stretch infinitely ahead. The sun begins its relentless climb in the sky. The heat gradually increases. It is as if the interlude at the oasis never happened, as if the desert were saying, "You had your rest, now get back to work." And they return because there is no choice, because the destination is still distant, because the merchandise will not deliver itself. But they return different, enriched by the encounters, strengthened by the information, connected by a few more threads to the vast network of humanity that is the Silk Road. After 3 days of marching since the oasis, the landscape begins to change dramatically. The endless dunes gradually give way to firmer terrain, covered with stones and gravel. Fine sand is replaced by compacted soil that resonates differently beneath the camel's hooves. On the horizon, something that seemed impossible after so many days of infinite plains. Mountains? These are not mirages this time, but real, solid formations that grow larger with each passing hour. They are the first foothills of a mountain range that the caravan will have to cross, a completely different challenge from the desert, but no less dangerous. The mountains first appear as blue shadows on the horizon, so distant they seem painted in the sky. But as the caravan advances, they gain definition. Jagged peaks, deep valleys, steep slopes covered with snow at their highest altitudes. The sight is both inspiring and intimidating. Inspiring because it represents change, because it means the desert is being left behind. Intimidating because everyone knows that crossing mountains with a loaded caravan is one of the most difficult and dangerous tasks of the journey. The temperature begins to drop as they gain altitude. The oppressive heat of the desert is replaced by a dry cold that bites at exposed skin. The men exchange their light clothes for heavier layers. Wool tunics, coats lined with sheepskin, more sturdy boots. The camels, surprisingly adaptable, seem not to mind the change much, their thick coats providing adequate protection. But other animals begin to appear now. Yaks, with their long and shaggy hair, better suited to mountainous terrain and the thin air of great altitudes. The vegetation also changes. The sparse and hardy plants of the desert give way to more robust shrubs, then to short and twisted trees that cling to rocky slopes. There is grass here, not the sparse grass of the oasis, but dense carpets that cover the valleys between the mountains. There are wildflowers in vibrant colors, yellows, purples, reds, that contrast dramatically with the grey rocks. There is the sound of flowing water, not the precious trickle of an oasis, but true streams descending from the mountains, fed by melting snow at the highest altitudes. The path becomes more difficult. There is no longer the relatively uniform march of the desert, but steep climbs followed by dangerous descents. The camels, so perfectly adapted to sand, struggle with the rocky terrain. Their wide hooves, ideal for not sinking into sand, slip on loose stones. The caravan must significantly slow its pace, with every step carefully considered. Men walk ahead, testing the path, removing loose rocks, identifying the safest routes. In some stretches, the path narrows so much that only one animal can pass at a time. On one side, the rocky wall of the mountain rises vertically. On the other, a precipice drops hundreds of meters to a rocky valley below. There is no room for error. Animals are guided individually, with men holding their reins firmly, speaking to them in calm and reassuring tones. One misstep here would mean not only the loss of an animal and its cargo, but potentially the death of whoever was guiding it. Have you ever wondered how much of our modern life is built on the sacrifice and courage of people who risked everything to connect distant worlds? At night, camping in the mountains is completely different from camping in the desert. There is no soft sand to absorb tent stakes, but hard rock that requires considerable effort to secure anything. The wind here is stronger and colder, descending from high altitudes with a force that can knock down poorly secured tents. Fires are more difficult to light as the thin air contains less oxygen, and the wood, though more abundant than in the desert, is often wet or green. But there are compensations. Water is abundant and fresh, flowing directly from the mountains, so cold it hurts your teeth when you drink. There is more variety in the diet. Wild herbs that can be gathered. Occasionally, an animal hunted by those with the skill for it. And there is the view. When the sky is clear, the mountains at sunset are a spectacle of indescribable beauty. Snow-covered peaks capture the last rays of sun and shine in shades of pink, orange and gold against the darkening sky. It is a reminder that the world is vast and beautiful, and that there are wonders that compensate for the difficulties of the journey. But the mountains also bring new dangers. Avalanches can be triggered by the slightest sound, burying entire sections of the path under tons of snow and rock. Snowstorms can arise from nowhere, reducing visibility to zero and freezing anyone caught unprepared. Wild animals, wolves, snow leopards, lurk at the higher altitudes, occasionally attacking pack animals that separate from the group. And there is always the danger of bandits who know every cave, every hidden passage, and who can attack and disappear before any effective defense can be mounted. On the third night in the mountains, the caravan camps in a relatively protected valley, surrounded by peaks on all sides. It is a place of austere beauty, where the silence is so profound that you can hear your own heart beating. The stars here seem closer, brighter, unobscured by desert dust or the moisture of the plains. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light, and it is easy to understand why so many ancient cultures saw in the heavens a map, a guide, a connection with the divine. The men gather around the fires closer to each other than in the desert, seeking shared warmth. Conversations are quieter here, as if the mountains demanded respect, as if speaking too loudly might awaken something better left sleeping. There are stories about these mountains, legends of spirits that protect the passages, of travelers who disappeared without a trace, of treasures hidden in inaccessible caves. Some stories are clearly fantastical, but others have that ring of truth that makes you wonder. One of the older merchants tells about a time, years ago, when his caravan was caught by an unexpected snowstorm. They took shelter in a cave, waiting for the storm to pass, but the snow continued to fall for 3 days, blocking the cave entrance, trapping them inside. The food ran out, then the water. They thought they would die there, frozen and forgotten. But on the 4th day, the snow stopped, and they managed to dig a way out. When they emerged, they discovered they were only 100 meters from a village they didn't know existed. The residents welcomed them, fed them, warmed them, saved their lives. He ends the story looking at the mountains around him and says softly, "The mountains are harsh, but the people who live in them understand hardship. And those who understand hardship often have the kindest hearts." The story hangs in the air, mingling with the smoke from the fires, and each person present absorbs it in their own way. Tomorrow they will continue climbing, closer to the highest peaks, closer to the thin air where each breath is a conscious effort. But for this night, there is the comfort of fire, of company, of shared story. And perhaps that is enough, not the certainty that everything will be all right, but the certainty that whatever happens, they will not be alone. The dawn in the mountains is a gradual and subtle event. Light does not flood the world all at once, as in the desert, but seeps slowly through the valleys, climbing the slopes, finally reaching the highest peaks that illuminate like golden beacons, while everything below still lies in shadow. The air is so cold that each breath comes out as a cloud of vapor, and frost covers everything in a thin and glittering layer that melts quickly when the sun finally reaches it. Today, the caravan will face its greatest challenge in the mountains, the pass of clouds, so called because at its highest altitude, you literally walk among the clouds. It is a narrow and treacherous passage that winds through the highest peaks, the only viable path through this section of the mountain range. Many travelers have died here over the centuries, from cold, from exhaustion, from falls, from avalanches. But it is also the fastest route, and time is money for merchants. So, despite the dangers, it is the path that most choose. The ascent begins early before the sun is fully above the horizon. The path is steep from the start, a narrow trail carved into the face of the mountain by countless feet over countless years. In some places, steps have been cut into the rock. In others, logs have been placed across crevasses to create precarious bridges. The caravan stretches into a thin line, each person and animal separated by several meters, to avoid overloading any section of the path. As they climb, the air becomes visibly more rarefied. Breathing requires conscious effort, and any physical activity leaves you breathless quickly. Newcomers to the Silk Road suffer most, some developing intense headaches, nausea, dizziness, the symptoms of altitude sickness. The veterans know that the only cure is time and acclimatization, so the pace is deliberately kept slow, allowing bodies to gradually adjust to the diminishing oxygen. The landscape here is of an alien beauty. The rocks are colors that you rarely see at lower altitudes. Deep reds, greens of oxidized copper, veins of crystalline white that may be quartz or marble. There are rock formations that seem to defy gravity, impossibly balanced pillars that should have fallen millennia ago but remain firm. There are caves whose entrances are decorated with ice stalactites that glitter like crystals when light strikes them at the right angle. Around midday, they reach the altitude where clouds form. Suddenly, the world disappears into a white and humid mist. Visibility drops to just a few meters. Sounds become muffled and distorted. It is disorienting and slightly terrifying, as if you had left the solid world and entered some intermediate realm between earth and sky. The guides, who know this path from memory, now assume complete leadership, their voices calling constantly to ensure no one is lost in the mist. Walking in the clouds is a surreal experience. You cannot see the path ahead beyond a few steps, cannot see the precipice you know is right there beside you. You must trust completely in the guides, in the animals, in your own ability to put one foot in front of the other without being able to clearly see where you are stepping. It is a lesson in faith, perhaps. The necessity of continuing forward even when you cannot see the complete path, trusting that those who came before marked the route correctly. And then, as suddenly as they entered the clouds, they emerge on the other side. The world reveals itself again, but now they are above most of the clouds, looking down at a white and undulating sea that extends to the horizon. Mountain peaks emerge from this sea like islands. and the sky above is such a deep and pure blue that it seems almost black. The sun shines with an intensity that is almost painful, reflecting off the snow and ice around with a blinding brightness. This is the highest point of the passage, and there is a tradition here. Travelers leave offerings, stones piled into cairns, pieces of cloth tied to posts, small sculptures carved from wood or bone. It is not specific to any one religion, but a universal practice among those who cross these mountains. It is a way of giving thanks for having come so far, of asking for protection for the rest of the journey, of leaving a mark that you have been here, that you have survived this challenge. The caravan stops briefly and each person adds their own offering to the growing heap. There is a moment of contemplative silence as everyone looks at the view around them. From here you can see for hundreds of kilometers in all directions. You can see the desert you crossed, now just a distant brown patch. You can see the green valleys below where rivers wind like silver ribbons. You can see other mountain ranges on the horizon, layer after layer of peaks extending as far as sight reaches. It is a perspective that puts everything in context: how small humans are, how vast the spaces they attempt to cross, how remarkable it is that they succeed at all. But there is no time for prolonged contemplation. The cold here is intense, and remaining still for too long is dangerous. The descent on the other side of the pass is, in many ways, more dangerous than the ascent. It is steeper, the path is more treacherous, and gravity works against you, pulling you forward, threatening to make you lose your balance. The animals must be carefully controlled, their loads constantly checked to ensure they do not shift and throw them off balance. At one particularly steep point, there is an ingenious system developed over generations. Thick ropes are permanently fixed to the rock face, anchored at multiple points. The animals are tied to these ropes, which are then used to control them as they descend, preventing them from slipping or falling. It is a slow and laborious process, each animal having to be guided individually, but it is the only safe way to negotiate this particularly dangerous section. Finally, after hours of careful descent, the path begins to level off. Vegetation returns. First lichens and mosses, then low shrubs, finally true trees. The air becomes denser, easier to breathe. The temperature gradually rises. They have left the worst of the mountains behind. There are still days of travel through mountainous terrain, but nothing as extreme as the pass of clouds. There is a palpable sense of relief in the caravan, a lightness in the steps that was not there in the morning. That night, camped in a protected valley with true trees providing abundant firewood, the fires burn higher and hotter than on any recent night. There is a sense of celebration, though a quiet one. They have crossed the desert, survived the sandstorms, climbed the mountains, walked among the clouds. Each challenge overcome is a victory. Each day survived is a triumph. And though there is still much road ahead, many dangers yet to face, in this moment, there is only gratitude for being alive, for being here, for being part of this extraordinary journey that connects worlds. The descent from the mountains reveals a transformed world. The valleys here are wide and fertile, irrigated by rivers fed by melting snow from the mountains. Cultivated fields stretch in precise geometric patterns. Golden wheat swaying in the breeze, fruit orchards in bloom, vineyards whose vines coil around carefully constructed trellises. Villages and small cities dot the landscape, their houses built of mud brick or stone, their roofs covered with ceramic tiles that glitter in shades of red and orange beneath the sun. This is one of the most prosperous regions along the Silk Road, enriched by centuries of trade passing through here. Cities grew at points where commercial routes converge, where rivers can be crossed, where valleys open into plains suitable for large markets. Some of these cities are thousands of years old, their foundations buried beneath layers of successive civilizations, each building upon the ruins of the previous one, creating tells, artificial mounds that rise above the surrounding landscape. The caravan approaches one of these ancient cities as the afternoon turns to evening. Its walls are visible from afar, massive structures of stone and brick that rise 10 or 15 meters high, thick enough that carriages can circulate on their tops. Watchtowers punctuate the walls at regular intervals and fortified gates control access. These defenses are not merely decorative. Over the centuries, these cities have faced countless sieges, invasions, conquests. The walls are the difference between survival and destruction. The main gate is an impressive structure with double doors of reinforced wood bound with iron, tall enough to allow the passage of loaded camels. Guards are positioned here, checking each person and each load entering. It is not hostility but precaution. Bandits sometimes attempt to infiltrate cities disguised as legitimate merchants. There is also the matter of taxes. Each load is assessed, and a percentage of its value must be paid as an entry fee. It is a system that has existed for millennia, the way cities finance their defenses, their infrastructures, their administrations. The caravan leader negotiates with the tax collectors, a process that involves considerable haggling and discussion. Each side knows the game. The collectors try to assess the merchandise at the highest possible value. The merchants try to minimize the declared value. Eventually an agreement is reached, coins change hands, and the caravan receives permission to enter. It is a familiar ritual repeated in every city along the Silk Road, an economic dance as old as commerce itself. Within the walls, the city is a maze of narrow and winding streets. 2 or 3-story houses cluster against each other, their upper stories often projecting over the street, almost touching, creating shaded tunnels where the sun rarely reaches the ground. The streets are paved with stones worn smooth by countless feet over centuries. Drainage channels run along the edges, carrying water and waste out of the city. The air is filled with 1,000 different smells. Bread baking, meat grilling, spices, perfumes, animal dung, smoke from fires, the damp smell of fabrics being dyed. The caravan heads for the city's caravanserai, a large structure specifically built to accommodate traveling merchants. It is organized around a large central courtyard where animals can be unloaded and kept. Around the courtyard, there are 2-story rooms, the lower ones for storing merchandise, the upper ones for merchants to sleep. There are stables for the animals, workshops where equipment can be repaired, communal kitchens, even small mosques, temples, and churches for the different religions of the travelers. The caravanserai is full of activity. Other caravans are already here, some resting before continuing, others preparing to depart. There are local merchants who come to negotiate with the newcomers, buying merchandise in bulk to resell in the city's markets. There are craftspeople offering their services, blacksmiths who can repair tools and weapons, saddlers who can mend harnesses, tailors who can patch clothes worn thin by the journey. There are money changers who can exchange the coins of one region for another, charging a fee for the service, of course. After unloading and accommodating the animals, caravan members finally have time to care for themselves. Many head to the city's public baths, elaborate structures with rooms of different temperatures: cold, warm, hot, steam. After weeks in the desert and mountains with only superficial cleanings, the opportunity for a proper bath is an indescribable luxury. The dirt and sweat of weeks are washed away, aching muscles are relaxed in the heat, and people emerge feeling renewed, almost reborn. Clean and wearing clean clothes, or at least less dirty ones, the merchants head to the city's markets. These are the beating heart of any city on the Silk Road, mazes of stalls and shops where practically anything can be bought or sold. There are specialized sections, the spice market where the air is so saturated with aromas that it makes your eyes water, the textile market where silks and cottons in every imaginable color hang on display, The metals market, where copper, bronze, silver, and gold are worked into infinite forms. The caravan's merchants set up their own temporary stalls, displaying the merchandise they brought from distant lands. Local buyers circulate, examining, touching, smelling, asking questions. Negotiations begin, offers and counter-offers flying back and forth, sometimes in multiple languages with translators facilitating communication. It is a process that can take hours for a single transaction, but no one is in a hurry. Negotiation is as much a social art as an economic transaction, a dance of mutual respect and attempts at advantage. As afternoon transforms into night, the character of the market changes. Merchandise stalls give way to food stalls. Fires are lit, and the smell of cooking food fills the air. There are lamb kebabs grilled on skewers, flatbreads baked in mud ovens, pilaf rice cooked with saffron, and dried fruits, thick soups of lentils and vegetables, sweets made with honey and nuts. People gather around the food stalls, eating standing or seated on low benches, conversing, laughing, sharing stories. There is entertainment as well. Musicians play stringed and percussion instruments, creating complex melodies that blend influences from all cultures along the Silk Road. Dancers perform, their movements graceful and precise, their colorful clothes spinning and flowing. Storytellers capture audiences with tales of heroes and monsters, of lost loves and found treasures, of dangerous journeys and triumphant returns. Jugglers, acrobats, magicians all compete for the attention and coins of the crowd. In this city, in this moment, the Silk Road is more than a trade route. It is a meeting point of cultures, a place where East and West mingle and influence one another. You can see it in people's clothes, which combine styles from multiple regions. You can hear it in the languages spoken, often mixing words from different idioms in a single phrase. You can taste it in the food, which incorporates spices and cooking techniques from distant lands. You can feel it in the atmosphere, an openness and curiosity about the different that is rare in more isolated places. Is this not what our modern world lacks, despite all its technological connectivity? This kind of genuine, face-to-face mixing of different cultures? The dawn in the city is announced not by the silence of the desert or the bird song of the mountains, but by the sound of human activity. Gates creaking as they are opened, vendors setting up their stalls, the call to prayer echoing from minarets, the lowing of cattle being led to market, the hammering of blacksmiths already working in their forges. The city never completely sleeps, but there is a distinct rhythm, the slow pulse of night giving way to the accelerated heartbeat of day. For the caravan members, this is a crucial day. It is the day when months of planning, weeks of dangerous journey, and significant investments of capital finally convert to profit or loss. The merchandise they brought must be sold, and new merchandise must be acquired for the next stage of the journey. Each decision made today will affect not only the financial success of this trip, but potentially the future of entire families who depend on these merchants. The most experienced merchants begin early, visiting specific buyers with whom they have established relationships on previous trips. These relationships are valuable. A trustworthy buyer who pays fair prices and on time is a rare treasure. Negotiations happen in private rooms in the backs of shops, over tea, and polite conversation that gradually moves to business matters. Prices are discussed, qualities assessed, quantities agreed upon. Contracts are sealed with handshakes and, for larger transactions, documents written in multiple languages, but not all business is so straightforward. Some merchants discover that the prices they expected to receive have fallen due to an oversupply. Another caravan recently arrived with similar merchandise, saturating the market. Others discover that merchandise they thought had little value here is highly sought after due to fashion or political changes they could not have foreseen. Trade on the Silk Road is always a gamble, a game of incomplete information and unpredictable luck. One of the youngest merchants in the caravan on his first major journey faces a difficult decision. He brought high-quality silk from his hometown, hoping to sell it at a price that would cover his costs and provide modest profit. But prices here are lower than he expected. If he sells now, he will barely cover his expenses. But if he continues carrying the silk, risking more weeks of journey to reach more distant cities where prices might be better, he risks losing everything if something goes wrong on the way. It is a dilemma every merchant faces at some point: accept a small, guaranteed profit or risk everything for a potentially larger one. He seeks advice from the caravan leader, the experienced man who guided them through the desert and mountains. The leader listens to his situation, then speaks slowly, choosing his words carefully. Commerce, he says, is not just about buying cheap and selling dear. It is about understanding risk, about knowing your own limits, about knowing when to hold and when to let go. I cannot make this decision for you, but I can tell you this. A merchant who never takes risks never prospers, but a merchant who risks everything eventually loses everything. Wisdom is in finding the balance. The young merchant ponders these words. Finally, he decides to sell half his silk here, ensuring he will at least recover his costs and carry the other half forward, betting that prices will be better in the next cities. It is a compromise, a division of risk, and while it is neither the boldest nor the most cautious decision, it is one he can live with. Sometimes wisdom is not in making the perfect choice, but in making a choice you can accept, regardless of the outcome. While business happens, other caravan members handle practical tasks. Worn equipment is replaced, ropes that are unraveling, water skins that have developed leaks, harnesses that have broken, provisions are restocked, grains, dried fruits, salted meat, tea, cooking spices. Some animals that were injured or sickened during the journey are sold or traded for healthier ones. It is tedious but necessary work, the constant maintenance that keeps a caravan functional. There are also decisions about who will continue with the caravan and who will stay behind. Some merchants have reached their intended destination and will remain in this city, selling their merchandise over weeks or months before eventually returning home. Others have decided they have had enough. The journey was harder than expected, or they received news from home requiring their return, or they have simply lost their taste for life on the road. There is no shame in stopping and acknowledging your limits. The Silk Road is not for everyone, but there are also new members joining the caravan, merchants from this city who want to take their merchandise west, travelers who need the protection of a large caravan to cross the dangerous regions ahead, even some adventurers and pilgrims who travel not for profit but for curiosity or faith. Each new member is evaluated by the caravan leader. Do they have sufficient resources for the journey? Do they seem trustworthy? Will they bring problems or value to the group? These are difficult decisions, for accepting the wrong person can put everyone at risk. As the day progresses, business is concluded, preparations finalized. There is one last night in the city, one last opportunity to sleep in a real bed, to eat fresh food, to enjoy the comforts of civilization. Some make the most of it, visiting baths again, eating in restaurants, even attending performances in theaters or tea houses. Others prefer to rest, conserving energy for the journey that will resume tomorrow. In the caravanserai, there is a bitter-sweet atmosphere. Friendships have formed during the weeks on the road, bonds created through shared hardship. Now some of these bonds will be broken as people follow different paths. There are farewells, embraces, promises to meet again that both parties know will probably not be kept. There is exchange of small gifts, a piece of cloth, an interesting stone found in the mountains, a recipe written on precious paper. They are small tokens, but they carry significant emotional weight. One of the merchants who is staying behind approaches the caravan leader. They traveled together for 3 weeks, crossed the desert and mountains side by side. Now their journeys diverge. They look at each other for a long moment, then briefly embrace, patting each other's backs. There is no need for words. Everything that needs to be said is in that gesture. Then the merchant who stays moves away, disappearing into the caravanserai crowd, and the leader turns to the tasks that still need to be done. That night, lying in his bed in the caravanserai, hearing the sounds of the city outside, distant voices, occasional music, the barking of dogs, the night call of guards on the walls, the caravan leader reflects on the journey so far. They lost 2 camels in the desert, 1 to illness and 1 to a fall in the mountains. 3 men decided to return home, unable to continue. But no one died, no important merchandise was lost, and most merchants managed to conduct profitable business. By those standards, it was a successful journey, but there is still much road ahead, many dangers yet to face. Tomorrow, they will leave the safety of the city's walls and return to the open road, and there only the gods know what awaits them. Dawn arrives with crystalline clarity, the air fresh and clean after a light overnight rain that washed the dust from the streets. The caravan gathers in the caravanserai courtyard, now reorganized with new members and without those who stayed behind. There are familiar faces and new ones, but all share the same determination: to continue, to advance, to reach destinations that still lie weeks or months away. The animals are loaded once more, a process that now seems almost automatic after so many repetitions. But there are subtle differences. Some camels have been replaced by yaks, better suited for the terrain ahead. The loads are different too, reflecting the transactions of the last few days. Silks have been sold and replaced by spices, porcelains have been traded for precious metals. Each merchant has adjusted his inventory based on complex calculations of value, weight, expected demand in future cities. The caravan leader makes a final check, walking down the line of animals and people, his experienced eyes noticing details that others would miss. A rope tied slightly incorrectly, a load that is unbalanced, an animal that seems to be limping slightly. Each problem is corrected before it becomes serious. It is this attention to detail, this constant vigilance, that separates successful caravans from those that end in disaster. Finally, everything is ready. The leader raises his hand and the caravanserai gate is opened. The caravan begins to move, heading out into the city streets that are only beginning to awaken. They pass vendors setting up their stalls, bakers pulling the first loaves of the day from their ovens, guards changing shifts on the walls. Some residents wave, others barely look. Caravans are common here, part of the daily rhythm of life. They pass through the city's main gate and suddenly they are outside the walls, back in the open world. The road ahead is well maintained here, paved with stones, lined with trees that provide shade. There are markers every kilometre, indicating distances to various cities. There are rest stations at regular intervals, small structures where travellers can rest, obtain water, sometimes buy food. This section of the Silk Road is well developed, maintained by local authorities who understand that commerce is the source of their prosperity, but as the day advances and they move away from the city, the road gradually becomes less maintained. The paving gives way to compacted earth, the trees become more sparse, the markers disappear. They are entering less controlled territory where central authority is weak and where other dangers become more likely. The caravan leader increases vigilance, positioning guards at the front and back of the line, instructing everyone to stay alert. The landscape here is rolling hills covered with tall grass that sways in the wind like waves in a golden ocean. Occasionally, there are groves of trees in valleys where streams run. There is wildlife, herds of antelope that flee at the caravan's approach, birds of prey circling high in the sky, occasionally a solitary wolf watching from a safe distance. It is beautiful, but also isolated. They see no other people for hours, then for days. On the third day after leaving the city, they find evidence that not everyone who travels this road has peaceful intentions. There are remains of a caravan that was attacked, cargo scattered and plundered, the skeletons of animals that were killed or died of thirst after being abandoned, even some human bones bleached white by the sun. It is a grim reminder of the dangers they face. The leader orders them to quicken the pace and double their vigilance. No one needs to be instructed twice. That night, the camp is established in a defensive pattern. Animals are kept in the center, surrounded by a circle of tents, with guards positioned at the perimeter. Fires are kept small so as not to attract attention from afar. Conversations are quiet. There is tension in the air that was not present on previous nights. Everyone knows bandits prefer to attack at night, when darkness offers cover and when people are tired and less alert. But the night passes without incident. Dawn brings relief, but not complacency. They continue maintaining a quick pace, eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of danger. And then, in the middle of the afternoon, they see something, a cloud of dust on the horizon, moving in their direction. It could be another caravan, could be a military patrol, could be bandits. There is no way to know until they get closer. The leader makes quick decisions. The caravan compacts, closing the spaces between animals. Armed men move to outer positions. Weapons are checked, swords drawn slightly to ensure they are not stuck, bows prepared with arrows at hand. But they do not stop, do not show fear. Showing weakness is to invite attack. They continue forward, ready to fight if necessary, but hoping it is not. As the distance diminishes, details become visible. It is a group of riders, perhaps 20 or 30, moving quickly. But there is something in their formation, in their discipline, that suggests they are not bandits. And then, when they are close enough, flags become visible, the colors and symbols of a local authority. It is a military patrol, probably searching for the same bandits who attacked the caravan whose remains they found. The riders approach and stop. Their leader, a middle-aged man with scale metal armor and a decorated helmet, rides forward. There is an exchange of formal greetings, questions about where they came from and where they are going, warnings about dangers ahead. The patrol leader confirms that bandits have been active in this area, but that they are being hunted. He offers to escort the caravan for a day until they reach safer territory. The offer is accepted with gratitude. With the military escort, the rest of the day passes without incident. The riders circle the caravan, their trained eyes constantly scanning the terrain. Their presence is reassuring, but also serves as a reminder that danger is real and present. At nightfall, they reach a small fort, one of many military structures that dot the Silk Road, built to protect the commerce that is the lifeblood of the region. The fort's commander invites them to camp within his walls, an offer that is accepted enthusiastically. Within the walls, there is true security for the first time in days. There are soldiers, there are defenses, there is certainty that any attack would be repelled. People relax in ways they could not over the last few days. There is laughter, animated conversation, even music. It is as if a weight has been lifted from everyone's shoulders. That night, sitting around a fire with some of the other merchants, one of the older men speaks. "You know," he says, "I make this journey for 30 years, and each time I swear it will be the last. Each time I tell myself I'm too old, that the dangers are too great, that I have earned enough money. But then, after a few months at home, I begin to miss it. Not the danger, not the hardship, but this." He gestures around, encompassing the caravan, the fort, the invisible road beyond the walls. This feeling of being alive, of doing something that matters, of being connected to something greater than myself. The Silk Road is not just about merchandise, it is about connection, it is about being part of something that unites the world. His words hang in the air, and each person present absorbs them in their own way. Because he is right, in a way. Yes, they are here for profit, for economic necessity, but there is something more as well. There is the sense of purpose, of adventure, of being part of a tradition that extends for millennia. There is the satisfaction of overcoming challenges, of surviving what many would not survive. There are the connections made, the stories shared, the experiences that no one who has not traveled this road can truly understand. And perhaps in the end, that is as valuable as any merchandise they carry. The journey along the Silk Road never truly ends. It simply pauses in one place before resuming in another. Merchants who reach their destinations eventually become merchants who return home, retracing their steps or finding new routes. The merchandise that travels from east to west is balanced by that which travels from west to east. It is a constant flow, a river of commerce and culture that has run for more than 2,000 years, connecting civilizations, transforming societies, changing the world in ways those who traverse it rarely fully understand. When we look at the Silk Road through the lens of history, it is easy to romanticize it, to imagine noble adventures, harmonious cultural exchanges, a golden age of ancient globalization. And there is truth in that. The Silk Road really did facilitate extraordinary exchanges. Technologies traveled along it, papermaking from China to the west, glass-making techniques from the Mediterranean to the east. Religions spread through it, Buddhism from India to China, Islam from Arabia to Central Asia, Nestorian Christianity to distant lands. Ideas, philosophies, arts, music all flowed along these routes, mixing and transforming in the process. But the reality of the Silk Road was also harsh, dangerous, often brutal. For every merchant who prospered, there were others who lost everything. For every caravan that arrived safely at its destination, there were others that disappeared in the desert or were massacred by bandits. Diseases traveled along these routes as much as merchandise. The bubonic plague, which devastated Europe in the 14th century, probably arrived via the Silk Road. Military conquests followed trade routes, armies marching where merchants had walked before, and yet people continued traveling. Generation after generation, they carried their merchandise through deserts and mountains, risked their lives in pursuit of profit and opportunity. Why? Partly from economic necessity, certainly, but also for something deeper, a fundamental human impulse to explore, to connect, to see what lies beyond the horizon. The same force that led the first humans to leave Africa and populate the entire world, that led explorers to cross oceans, that leads us today to look at the stars and imagine journeys still more distant. When we compare the Silk Road to our modern world, the differences are obvious. A message that would take months to travel from Chang'an to Rome is now transmitted instantaneously. Merchandise that required caravans of hundreds of camels now fits in a single shipping container. Journeys that lasted years are now completed in hours by plane. We have GPS instead of stars, paved roads instead of sand trails, instant communication instead of rumors, passed from caravan to caravan. But some things remain surprisingly similar. We still negotiate across borders, still depend on complex networks of trade to get the things we want and need. There are still middlemen who buy cheap in one place and sell dear in another. There are still risks, not from bandits or sandstorms perhaps, but from market fluctuations, political changes, supply chain disruptions. And there is still the fundamental need for trust that contracts will be honored, that merchandise will be as described, that business partners will act with integrity. More profoundly, we still face the same tension between connection and isolation. The Silk Road connected civilizations but also revealed differences between them. Today, the internet connects us instantly to billions of people, but can also amplify divisions, create echo chambers, reinforce prejudices. We have more information available than any previous generation, but struggle to distinguish truth from falsehood, signal from noise. We can communicate with anyone in the world, but often feel more isolated than ever. The travelers of the Silk Road had something that perhaps we have lost: the necessity of face-to-face connection, of direct cooperation for survival. When you are in the middle of the desert, depending on strangers for water, protection, guidance, cultural or religious differences become secondary to shared humanity. When you share a meal with someone who speaks a different language, worships different gods, comes from a land you will never see, but who is facing the same hardships as you, a connection is created that transcends these differences. Perhaps that is what we most need to recover from the spirit of the Silk Road, not the romanticization of a past era, but the recognition that true connection requires effort, risk, vulnerability. It requires stepping out of our comfort zones, crossing our own metaphorical deserts, climbing our own mountains of misunderstanding and prejudice. It requires the willingness to sit with strangers and share tea, to listen to stories that challenge our assumptions, to recognize that there are multiple ways of seeing and being in the world. The Silk Road also teaches us about resilience and adaptation. Routes changed constantly in response to political, climatic, economic conditions. When one passage became too dangerous, another was found. When one city declined, another arose to take its place. Merchants who prospered were those who could adapt, who could read changes and adjust their strategies, who could find opportunities where others saw only obstacles. In our world of rapid change, climate change, technological change, social change, this capacity for adaptation is more crucial than ever. The solutions that worked in the past may not work in the future. The routes we follow may need to be reimagined, but fundamental principles remain: cooperation, creativity, resilience, the willingness to keep moving forward even when the path is uncertain. And finally, the Silk Road reminds us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Each merchant who crossed the desert was a node in a vast network of commerce and culture that stretched across continents. Each transaction, each conversation, each story shared was a thread in that network. No single person could see the complete network, but each contributed to it. And over centuries, that network transformed the world, spreading ideas and innovations that shaped civilizations. Today, we are part of even vaster networks: economic, social, digital, ecological. Our actions, however small they seem, ripple through these networks in ways we rarely can predict. A choice we make as consumers affects workers on the other side of the world. An idea we share online can reach millions. A problem we create locally can have global consequences. We are all travelers on the modern road, carrying not just merchandise but responsibilities, opportunities, the potential to connect or divide, to build or destroy. So, as you prepare to sleep tonight, consider this: you are on your own journey, crossing your own deserts and mountains. There are moments of difficulty ahead, certainly, but also oases of beauty and connection. There are storms you will have to face, but also fellow travelers who will help you. And though you may not see the final destination, though the path may be uncertain, you are doing your part in something larger: humanity's continuing journey toward understanding, connection, a future we build together, one step at a time. May you find rest tonight, and may tomorrow, when you awake, bring you the courage of the Silk Road travelers to keep moving forward, to embrace the unknown, to build bridges where others see only chasms. Good night, and may your dreams be of extraordinary journeys and unexpected connections.